The strength of the shield. In the small suburban town of Cedar Hills, the Davis family had lived for generations. Tasha Davis, a proud Black woman in her early 30s, had recently moved back with her two young children to care for her aging mother. The house they settled in was older, but it had character. And to Tasha, it represented a new chapter of resilience and family strength. However, Cedar Hills was not always as welcoming as she had hoped. The neighborhood, though seemingly quiet, harbored deep-seated tensions under the surface. Tasha had always felt the cool, wary stares of her neighbors, but she remained focused on her family and work, determined not to let it affect her. Yet, things started to take a darker turn when a group of neighbors led by an older couple, the Garrison family, began making passive-aggressive remarks about the new residents in the area. They made comments about the wrong kind of people moving into their neighborhood and began to distance themselves further from Tasha's family. Despite these efforts to isolate her, Tasha knew that the well-being of her children and her elderly mother depended on her strength. But things began to escalate when the Garrison family decided to take matters into their own hands. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Tasha was standing in her driveway, finishing up some yard work. Her son Malik was playing basketball in the driveway while her daughter, Zora, ran around with the dog. That's when the Garrison family, along with a few other neighbors, pulled up in their truck. "We don't appreciate your kind here," Mr. Garrison sneered from the driver's seat, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're not welcome in this neighborhood. We've got our eyes on you." Tasha stood firm, her eyes steady. She had faced hatred before, but this time, something inside her clicked. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her family's safety and dignity. "You don't have to like me," Tasha said, her voice calm but firm. "But my children and my mother deserve to be here, just as much as anyone else. You're not going to intimidate me or them." The Garrison family exchanged glances, but the tension in the air was palpable. Tasha could feel their hostility building, but she wasn't backing down. She turned to walk inside, but then she saw the glint of something from the corner of her eye. A flash of movement. Mr. Garrison, who had been quiet for a moment, was now approaching her, his hand hovering near his pocket. Tasha's heart pounded in her chest, but she didn't panic. Inside the house, her husband Marcus, a former Marine, had already prepared for such a moment. He had taught Tasha how to protect herself, and she had become more than just a mother. She had become a protector. She calmly stepped inside the house and into the living room, where her husband had placed the firearm they kept for self-defense. It was a part of their home security, but tonight, it was more than that. It was a symbol of strength, justice, and the promise that no one would harm her family. Tasha grabbed the weapon, checking the safety, and then walking back to the front yard, where the Garrison family had now surrounded her driveway, a menacing air between them. "You want to make a move?" Tasha's voice was steady, her hand holding the weapon in front of her, the barrel pointing downward, but her eyes locked onto them with an unshakable force. "You come on over here, and let's see what happens." The neighbors froze. They hadn't expected this. The sight of her standing her ground with the weapon, calmly asserting her authority, caused the anger in their eyes to falter. The Garrison family and their supporters exchanged glances, uncertainty creeping into their faces. Without a word, the group slowly backed up, retreating to their vehicles, their faces pale. The tension in the air finally dissipated as the truck engines roared to life, and the neighbors quickly sped off. Tasha stood there, her chest rising and falling with the remnants of adrenaline, but she didn't lower the weapon. She remained strong, protecting her family from a threat that tried to break her spirit. She knew the fight was far from over, but she had proven something important that night. not just to the people in Cedar Hills, but to herself. She would protect her family with everything she had, and she would never allow hate to take root in her home. The weapon was not just a tool, it was her shield, and it symbolized that she would stand tall no matter who tried to push her down. That night, Tasha didn't just protect her family. She gave them a lesson in courage and resilience that they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. In Cedar Hills, the neighbors knew better than to challenge the strength of a woman who would fight for her family no matter the cost.